Hello. If you are joining us, it is approximately 6:46 p.m. on November 19th, the year 2020. Welcome to the Erewhon Lit Salon for tonight. My name is Marty Cahill. I am the marketing and publicity manager with Erewhon Books. I will be one of your hosts for the evening, and we're live. CL Polk and Alix Harrow should be here shortly, and we'll be starting around 7 p.m. Eastern. So we hope to see you soon. I'll be around. I'll be here if you need me. But otherwise, it's just me for now until we get some viewers in. So don't mind me. Hello. Looks like we've got some people joining us. Welcome to the Erewhon Lit Salon tonight. My name is Marty, and I'll be one of your hosts. We just started about a minute and 11 seconds ago. So we're going to wait for Alix and Chelsea to come on, and we should have a nice night ahead of us. If you need anything, you can put something in the comment box, and I'll see it. And if you want to say hi, I'll say hi back too. Also, we're not going to get started for 10 minutes, so if you want to tell your friends, you got time. Get them in here. We got some folks joining.
Good. Okay. Hey. Oh,
Hello.
God, my hair is a mess.
Your hair is fine.
I look like I just rolled out of bed, even though I promise that's not what's been happening.
Let me see. There we go. Hello.
Hello.
I always enjoy when people join early because until then, it's just me talking to myself. So
I'm sure that's equally entertaining.
I mean, for the captive audience of myself and the three folks who had joined earlier, sure, but it's always nice to have someone to bounce off of that's not myself.
Wait, so when you say the three folks who joined earlier, are there people currently watching?
There are people watching live right now. I'm not sure if you can see it in your corner, but there's a little eye icon in the top left for me that gives me how many folks are currently here.
Oh, I just have live and a counter. And so I didn't know that there were people watching us, fix our hair and
Oh, well, I've now brought you into the live stream. If you want a second to go away, I can send you back to the void for a few minutes if you want to, and then bring you back.
The void. No, this is fine.
I have the power of life and death here at StreamYard. Although I'm not sure if that's their company slogan or if I'm just riffing, but they're welcome to it.
Mm.
Let's see, I'm just tweeting for the masses. Okay. And I'm going to All right, we're in business. It's so funny because it's so dark over here, but the light is still out where you are, Sarah. Still have a little more daylight to go.
Yeah.
Lucky it gets dark at like 4:30. I know it gets dark at 4:30 for you too, but also from where I'm standing, you still got sunlight.
Yeah.
Which is a misnomer because I'm sitting, but still.
Yeah. It's going to be dead dark here in about 15 minutes.
I was going to say, what time is it for you, Chelsea? Like 4:42?
4:52.
Gotcha.
And right now the sky is the color of my turtleneck.
That last gasp, I understand.
Yeah. You're going to see the lighting change behind me as we do this. So
Slowly fading.
Yep. I just want it to happen at like an opportune, ominous moment.
Thematic is really what we're going for here. Oh. Awesome. Well, we've got a few people that joined us since. So for anybody who just joined, hello. Thank you for coming tonight and hanging out with us. We appreciate you watching live. This will also be recorded. So if you have friends who missed it, or if you have folks who haven't heard about it, but you think they'd be interested, you can find this on Erewhon's YouTube page, and we'll have that uploaded after this. So otherwise, thanks for being here. If you have any questions, any comments, if you just want to say hi, there's a comment box on the right if you're watching it live on YouTube, so feel free to use that. And here, of course, we have author C.L. Polk, writer of The Midnight Bargain, as well as Witchmark and Storm Song, and Soul Stars, the last in the trilogy, correct?
Yes.
Yes, amazing. We also have Sarah, who's one of our fantastic editors at Erewhon Books and was the editor for The Midnight Bargain. Hooray!
Alix, just making sure Alix has the right link, right? Because I noticed that Chelsea had a different link that she emailed around.
I am a gremlin and I can't find the right email. So I just found a link and then said something different. So I thought I would email and find out instead of like trying to scavenger hunt my way through my inbox.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did miss your email. I'm just seeing you now. Yeah, the correct one should be on the email chain. So if I don't hear from her in a little while, I'll check in, but I think we should be good. I'll put up a little technical difficulty sign and go da-da-da-da-da. But I'm sure it'll be okay.
You're providing effects and music now?
It is like running a game of D&D. I just take over all sound effects.
Yeah. Just do your voices.
Mm-hmm. So tonight we're going to have Alix E, Harrow and C, Polk reading from their various books. Hi, Julia. Special shout out. Yes, if you put yourself in the comment box, I will say hello to you and shout you out online. Oh, we have 5 people joining us. I do think it's interesting though, because it's almost like telephone voice. Like sometimes people put different different voices when they answer a phone as opposed to how they talk in real life. Whenever I'm presenting or here for a YouTube thing, my voice always lowers straight down to like smooth jazz DJ, like closing the night out at like 11:30. It's like, it's really been great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us here at 95.2 KWXY Smooth Jazz.
Oh God, you do that so well.
Now I'm heading off, all you cool cats and kittens, so I'm going to leave you with one of my favorites. And starting at 12:05, my buddy Pete is going to pick up with some classic rock. But it's fun. Whenever I see the live video, I'm like, okay, time to go. And then it goes live, and I'm like, okay, here we are. Oh, and here is Alix. Let's add Alix to the stream. Hello.
Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. You're totally okay. How you doing?
I
mean, I know it's a muscle memory thing. I just ask it as a it's just a social conditioning of I want to know how people are doing and how the people I care about are doing, and it's like the answer is always
I'm doing great. Doing great. My country struggling a bit, but I personally am doing fine.
Wonderful. Makes me very happy to hear.
Great to hear.
Awesome. Well, it's 6:57, so we'll give it a couple minutes, let some folks continue to roll in. We had about 30 people RSVP or so, which is wonderful. So we'll let folks take their time coming on in. And yeah, so I'll probably give you the high sign when it's time to get started, and then I will vanish to the shadows and let Sarah introduce y'all. And yeah, otherwise we can just hang out and chat.
How do we want to do? We have like 2 sets of questions because we're overachievers, apparently. Do you want to just kind of like alternate who is asking who, Chelsea?
That sounds okay. Yeah, sure. Why not?
I mean, I'm not worried about it. I'm pretty sure we'll just talk and it'll go how it goes.
Yeah.
How about the questions are there as a guideline?
It's like how I use outlines with writing. I just like to know it's there, just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case I'm not sure how I want this book to end, I have this available.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got about 8 people live. We're currently streaming to YouTube, and we got 8 folks, and we'll give it a little bit more time for folks to show up, and then this is being recorded. So anybody who missed it can watch it later on our YouTube.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And join us in our Discord hang after.
Join us in the Discord hang, like and subscribe, don't forget to click. But yes, Erewhon does have a Discord. For anybody who just joined, welcome. Yes, we have a little community hangout after each of our lit salons. Super informal, super casual. It's on the Erewhon Discord, which we do have. If you don't have a link to that or don't have an invite to that yet, you can reach out to me at info, I-N-F-O, at erewhonbooks.com, and we'll get you squared away. Hi, Leah. As we've got some comments rolling in, feel free to say hello. Anybody who's watching, if you have any questions or comments, if you want to remark about how wonderful one of the readings is, if you like a comment, if you have a question for either author, you can feel free to drop it in the comment box. And I've continued my tradition of wearing an independent bookstore t-shirt. I've got my Book Moon shirt on representing Book Moon up in Massachusetts.
I don't think I've seen that one before.
Oh, yeah, I just got it like last month or two, so.
Oh.
Book Moon and other moons. So representing Kelly Link, Gavin Grant, support your independent bookstores. If you're shopping from indie bookstores for the holidays, shop early. They would really appreciate it. Alex, Chelsea, do you have any favorite indie bookstores? What about yourself, Sarah? Any locals?
I have a local bookstore in my neighborhood called The Next Page. It's on 9th Avenue Southeast in Calgary. I don't know, like every once in a while I'll scurry in there and I will buy a book and then I will leave. Like I've never actually talked to them and been like, "Hi, I'm a local author," blah blah blah. It's the closest bookstore to mine and it's a nice space. There's another one called the Owl's Nest Books, which is in a neighborhood I can't often get to, and they're like, "Hey, you're a local author."
So one of them knows and one of them doesn't, which I think is
My local bookstore in my tiny town actually closed during the pandemic. It didn't make it through. It's a very small town, and it was kind of miraculous that it was supporting an indie bookstore in the first place. So, yeah, we're all pretty sad about it.
I'm sorry to hear that.
My local is Q and Willow Books in Queens, New York. It's a women-owned indie, and I'm lucky enough to have basically seen it like start from, I think, a Kickstarter campaign or like.
Yeah, I remember that from a couple years ago.
Yeah, and that's like just my neighborhood store.
Lovely. My neighborhood. So when because of the pandemic, I'm living in Manhattan. So my neighborhood bookstore when I'm here is Shakespeare and Company up on 68th or 69th, I believe. But when I'm back in Astoria, it's the Astoria Bookshop, which is a lovely, wonderful home to many great booksellers and books. And they also love genre books, which is also wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hi, Leanne. Hi, Jay. I don't know who Lost in a Good Book is, but I like your street name. Awesome. Well, it's 7:01. I think we'll give it a few more minutes and we'll start around 7:05. if that
Sounds
works
good.
for everybody. And now silence. Don't mind me. I abhor a vacuum, so I seek to fill it at all times.
Spoken like an extrovert.
There was the joke today in our weekly meetings of the Erewhon team of I am the energy vampire, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I'm the extrovert of 3 introverts.
Yeah.
Is that the Erewhon math ratio? 1 extrovert for every 3 introverts? Is that how we're gonna?
Maybe. I mean, I would be curious to know how all of our authors, place themselves in the on the spectrum of extroversion to introversion.
That's true. Speaking of 1, Clark is in the chat. Hi, Clark. We've got Kim. We've got someone whose name is Giselle71. Hi. Clark, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you an ambivert? Or do you resist categorization?
I suspect it's the latter.
It might be the latter.
Knowing them, I suspect it's the latter.
Wonderful.
I feel like the pandemic is making everyone rethink their categorizations on their extrovertedness, right? Like, I know plenty of people who at the beginning of the pandemic were like, well, luckily I'm an introvert, so I don't even mind this. Staying home is my dream. And I was like, you wait, give it like 3 weeks.
This is the Hamilton gif of just you wait.
Exactly.
I know. And then I do have some extrovert friends who were like, man, going outside was exhausting. This is better. It's better to have one. Yeah.
Extroverts who are stuck in houses with small children and partners all the time who are like, I just want to be alone every so often. Just do anything to be alone. Which, is maybe a little bit me. I might be building myself a cabin in the backyard for that reason.
Coming along really well. It looks really good. I know
Those photos.
I know you don't believe it. I know you keep saying it doesn't look good, but I think it does look good to someone who doesn't know anything about that. So,
well, my main goal is to get the T111 up before my dad sees it so that he can't know how sketchy my framing was. He's a woodworker and construction worker and has been my whole life. So, just if I can hide it with glue and T111, it'll be fine.
Of course. That's amazing. Well, best of luck on it. It looks like it's coming along well. And again, I say this as somebody who knows nothing about it. So to me, it looked great. But that is the dream to have like a little writing nook all to oneself. That's great.
Extremely indulgent. I'm very happy.
Awesome. Well, on that note, it is exactly 7:05 by my clock. We've got about 20 or so folks who have joined us. And if you've just joined us, hello. Thank you so much for coming tonight and spending some time with us. I'm Marty. I'm the marketing publicity guy with Erewhon Books. I've got Sarah here, who is the wonderful editor of The Midnight Bargain and a wonderful editor with Erewhon Books. You've got, of course, authors Alix Harrow and C. Polk. And we are so excited to have you all with us. I'm going to vanish as I am mostly the opening host and tech guy, but if you need me at all, let me know. If you've just joined us, a reminder, if you have any comments or questions or just want to say hello, please utilize the comment box on the right. And I hope you all enjoy the reading. I'm going to disappear, and Sarah, you can take it from here. Smoke bomb.
Oh, God love him. Okay, so welcome everyone. I am thrilled to be introducing Alix E. Harrow, who will be our first reader, a former academic and adjunct. Alix E. Harrow is now a full-time writer living in Kentucky with her husband and their semi-feral kids. She is the author of Hugo Award-winning short fiction, and her debut novel, The 10,000 Doors of January, was a finalist for the Hugo, Nebula, and World Fantasy Awards. Find her at Alix E. Harrow on Twitter. Alix, take it away.
Thank you so much. I would say the only change in my bio is that they're no longer semi-feral. They've just gone fully feral. Okay, so I was told that I didn't have to read from the Witch book, and I've read from the Witch book a lot in the last month, so I am being terrible and indulgent, and I am reading from something that's not released yet. It's called A Spindle Splintered, and it's a Sleeping Beauty retelling novella from Tor.com that comes out next year. And I'm just going to start at the beginning because I can. So, Sleeping Beauty is pretty much the worst fairy tale, any way you slice it. It's aimless and amoral and chauvinist as shit. It's the fairy tale that feminist scholars cite when they want to talk about women's passivity in historical narratives. She literally sleeps through her own climax, as my favorite gender studies professor used to say. Double entendre fully intended. Jezebel ranked it as the least woke Disney movie of all time, which, in a world where The Little Mermaid exists, is really saying something. Ariel might have given up her voice for a dude, but Aurora barely uses hers. She has a grand total of 18 lines in her own movie, less than the prince, the villain, or any of the individual fairy godmothers. Even among the other nerds who majored in folklore, Sleeping Beauty is nobody's favorite. Romantic girls like Beauty and the Beast, basic girls like Cinderella, goth girls like Snow White, only the dying girls like Sleeping Beauty. I don't remember the first time I saw Sleeping Beauty, probably in some waiting room or hospital bed, interrupted by blipping machines and chirpy nurses, but I remember the first time I saw Arthur Rackham's illustrations. It was my 6th birthday, after cake but before my evening pills. The second to last gift was a leather-bound copy of Perrault's Fairy Tales from Dad. I was flipping through it, pretending to be a little more excited than I actually was, because even at 6, I knew my parents needed a lot of protecting, when I saw her. A woman in palest watercolor, lying artfully across her bed, eyes closed, one hand dangling white and limp, throat arched, black ink shadows looming like crows around her. She looked beautiful. She looked dead. Later, I'd find out that's how every Sleeping Beauty looks, hot and blonde and dead, lying in a bed that might be a bier. I touched the curve of her cheek, the white of her palm, half hypnotized. But I wasn't really a goner until I turned the page. She was still hot and blonde, but no longer dead. Her eyes were wide open, blue as June, defiantly alive. And it was like, I don't know, a beacon being lit, a flint being struck in my chest. Charmaine Baldwin, best/only friend, says Sleeping Beauty was my first crush, and she's not totally wrong, but it was more than that. It was like looking into a mirror and seeing my face reflected brighter and better. It was my own shitty story made mythic and grand and beautiful. A princess cursed at birth, a sleep that never ends, a dying girl who refused to die. Objectively, I'm aware that our stories aren't that similar. Wicked fairies are thin on the ground in rural Ohio, and I'm not suffering from a curse so much as fatal teratogenic damage caused by corporate malfeasance. If you drew a Venn diagram between me and Briar Rose, the overlap would be 1, doomed to die young, 2, hot in a fragile, consumptive way, 3, named after flowers. I mean, look, I have a folklore degree. I'm aware that Sleeping Beauty's name has ranged from Talia to Aurora to Zellandine. Do not Google that last one. But the Grimms called her Briar Rose, and my name is Zinnia Gray, so just let me have this one, all right? I'm not even blonde. After that birthday, I was pretty obsessed. It's one of the rules for dying girls. If you like something, like it hard, because you don't have a lot of time to waste. So I had Sleeping Beauty bed sheets and Sleeping Beauty toothpaste and Sleeping Beauty Barbies. My bookshelves filled with Grimm and Lang and then McKinley and Levine and Yolen. I read every retelling and every picture book. I bought a DVD set of the original Alvin and the Chipmunks run just to watch episode 85B, The Legend of Sleeping Brittany, which was just as awful as every other chipmunk-related piece of media. By the time I was 12, I'd seen 1,000 beauties prick their fingers on 1,000 spindles, 1,000 castles swallowed by 1,000 rose hedges. I still wanted more. I graduated high school 2 years early. Another one of the rules for dying girls is move fast, and went straight into the Department of Folk Studies and Anthropology at Ohio University. 7 semesters later, I had an impractical degree, a 200-page thesis on representations of disability and chronic illness in European folklore, and less than a year left to live. I think I'll stop there. Thank you, guys.
That was lovely. That was, I'm so excited to read the rest of it. All right. Next up is C.L. Polk. C.L. Polk is the World Fantasy Award-winning author of the critically acclaimed debut novel Witchmark, which was also nominated for the Nebula, Locus, Aurora, and Lambda Literary Awards. It was named one of the best books of 2018, according to NPR, Publishers Weekly, BuzzFeed, the Chicago Review, BookPage, and the BNN Science Fiction and Fantasy blog. She lives in Alberta, Canada. Take it away.
Hi. Okay, I am going to read from my witch book. I'm going to start with chapter 3. So things have already happened. I'm just going to trust that you can jump in. Beatrice awoke with the echoing pressure of a headache, and Clara laying out a dress choice for a day cooped up indoors waiting for callers. A printed cotton stripe trimmed in 30-point lace, the skirt a soft conical increase to be worn without a fulling gauge. Clara halted with the gowns in her arms and smiled. Good morning, Beatrice. Are you ready for your caller? It was time to wake up. It was time to smile and be unfailingly polite and find out why Isabella Lavon now wanted her acquaintance when she clearly had not wanted it at the bookstore. Good morning, Clara. The stripe will do. Not the peach with the lady slipper embroidery? My caller is to be Isabella Lavon, not Iante. She insisted on seeing me first. There could be a dozen reasons for that. Clara laid the gown on the foot of the bed and moved to Beatrice's bedside, dabbling a cloth in a basin of water. She wiped Beatrice's face. You're frowning. Headache. You drank too much elderflower punch. Clara swiped down her neck. I'll have cook mix you up a potion. I'll bring it to you in your bath. Up you come out of bed. Clara guided Beatrice to the bathing chamber and unbuttoned her nightgown, leaving Beatrice to descend into the water herself and place a cool cloth over her eyes. She had these few moments to herself before she was expected at breakfast, and then she would be pinned and laced into a gown that displayed her like a jewel and sent an artful message that she, expecting a quiet afternoon at home, had dressed herself simply, but the cut of the gown from neckline to hem was meant to flatter her youth. She was meant to be interrupted at a creative pursuit designed to reveal her education and skill. She was expected to display a sense of beauty and a skill to produce it. She played violin, though few women performed for public entertainment. She could draw in colored pastel and paint and oil, though few women's works hung on display in the galleries of Chasland. She was proficient in knitting, hooked lace, and simple embroidery, all skills that would be displayed on her children's clothing. Beatrice's head pounded, and she flipped the washcloth over, trying to sink into its soothing, cool embrace. Mercifully, the door opened, and Clara hustled inside. Beatrice lifted the cloth from her eyes and accepted the dose bottle, tipping it to her lips. Cook had tried to sweeten it, which only made it worse. Skyborn gods, that's awful, Beatrice gasped. Thank you, Clara. Is there water? I'll get it. Harriet, having just come in, crossed to the jug and poured a cup. Oh, I'm going to die. Just die, Harriet whispered. Ianthe Lavon has come in to call on you. He's beyond a Valserre and Marquis. He's beyond even a minister. Beatrice, it's just like crossing Quill Street when young Lord Cooper catches the attention of the Margrave of Went and... Oh, no. Harriet didn't know the truth. Harriet, it's not what you imagine. But he helps her father catch a hen, Harriet insisted. Oh, what? We do not keep hens. Well, neither did they, Harriet countered. It was from the market. Beatrice didn't want to begin untangling her little sister's logic. As you say. Harriet, Mother called. Come here, please. Harriet huffed, but she left Beatrice alone. Once clean, Beatrice donned a dressing gown and went downstairs to breakfast. A copy of the morning's broadsheet sat next to Father's empty place, and Beatrice picked one up, turning the pages to the shipping and finances section. Harriet leaned over to swat at her hands. You'll get ink smudged on your fingers. Ink comes off. Beatrice leaned away from her sister and read. Robichaud Automations is putting on a display of the latest inventions from Visby. These automatic wonders will delight onlookers as they usher in a new age of productivity and convenience. Here in Bendleton? Mother asked. In Meryton. I should like to see them. I understand that they can spin fine thread at astonishing speeds. It would be worth investing in manufactories for cotton if one acted quickly. Beatrice, Father said. He walked into the breakfast room and plucked the paper from her hands. What did I say about ladies reading the paper at breakfast? That it leads to squinting and wrinkles. But, Father, have you considered what I said about timber and iron yesterday? Father gave Beatrice a look of patient disappointment. You shouldn't be troubling yourself with such thoughts. You should be bursting with news of the assembly dance last night and of all the gentlemen you met. How many did you meet? Father moved to the head of the table, and servers moved into action, bringing heated plates of breakfast dishes to the family. We left before midnight, Father, Harriet said. Beatrice hardly had a chance to meet anyone. Father folded the paper so he could peer over it. I thought the assembly dance was important. It is, Harriet exclaimed, but Beatrice got her own cake, and she didn't dance once. Beatrice, Father said. I do wish you would take your duties seriously. Look at Harriet. She needed to be at that ball to make friends her own age. Leaving early cost her opportunities. I'm sorry, Father. She wasn't feeling well, Harriet said, defending her sister at last. But for all that, she has a suitor, and he's going to call on her today. He's not. Which suitor? Father asked. Ianthe Lavan. Father's smiling, indulgent gaze flicked from Harriet to land on Beatrice. The smile melted into open astonishment. You spoke to Ianthe Lavan? What did you speak of? Fidelity, Beatrice said, honoring one's family, the stars. Romantic, Mother said. Intellectual, Harriet said, and wrinkled her nose. Beatrice dropped her gaze to her plate. We only talked. She lied. No one needed to know the rest. Besides, Chaslander girls took kisses too seriously. It hadn't meant anything. Not from him. I hope you weren't too free with your knowledge, Father said. A man expects to guide his wife in all things. Displaying too much cleverness can make a woman seem less appealing. Mother is clever. Mother smiled, picking up her teacup once more. Your father is correct, my dear. We understand the shrewdness of women, Father said. Your education is unusual compared to a woman of higher birth. I stand by my decision to teach you the keeping of accounts and records, even though your husband is likely to have a secretary. It's more than you need to manage a house, but you'll know if your suppliers are cheating you. That is where a wife's cleverness shines. She could do rather more than that. She hated the idea of pretending to be less than she was for the sake of her husband's comfort and the 100 little ways she is expected to bend and give way. Ianthe had listened to her opinion. He had thanked her for it. He was the kindest man she'd ever met. But was it enough? And he's coming here, Harriet exclaimed. Today! He's not, Beatrice said, but Father set down his paper and his cup. What are you doing dawdling down here? You must get ready. But he's not coming here today, Father laughed. It's noble that you're not getting your hopes up, but you need to get ready for his calls. Upstairs with you. Be sure that Clara covers every detail. But I know he isn't. Go. Dismissed, Beatrice rose from the table. Clara waited in Beatrice's room, ready to dress her for the day. Beatrice braced herself as Clara laced her stays tight as a noblewoman's. She tilted her head back, sitting patiently through the painstaking application of her maquillage. She held very still, trying not to wince at the heat radiating from Clara's curling tongs. After a hasty tea on the terrace, Beatrice retired to the drawing room, where Harriet joined her with a sketchboard and attempted a rendering of the bundle of Springtime's Kiss gathered from the doorstep. The window stood open, and from between the gently billowing sheer curtains, the scent of cherry blossoms wafted into the room. Harriet suppressed a delighted noise when Beatrice picked up her violin case. She plucked the strings to tune them, inspected her bow, ran a handful of arpeggios along the 6 strings, fine-tuning along the way. Below them, the front door jingled. He's here, Harriet said. Play something. Play something. Beatrice played a dashing, nimble-fingered tune, welcoming Isbetta up the stairs. Harriet clasped her hands in delight, watching the doorway. She leaned forward as if the action would make the sight of Beatrice's collar come sooner, but it was the curving brim of a lady's hat that came into sight. Isbetta Lavan stood in the entry of the conservatory, every pleat and fall perfect. Her saffron cotton gown gleamed, her cream leather gloves held in one hand, her cartwheeled hat set at the perfect angle to shadow one eye, the other fixed on Beatrice, her eyebrow arched inquisitively. Isbetta carried a cloth-bound book with her. Beatrice's heart kicked a little faster. Beside her, Harriet deflated. Good afternoon, Isbetta Lavan said. Isbetta spoke in Hollandari. Beatrice held her bow in 2 careful fingers as she dipped her head in greed. Miss Lavan, my little sister Harriet. Harriet, what a fetching gown. Thank you, Harriet said, Hollandari falling easily from her tongue. I like yours too. Is your brother still with the horses? Ianthe has other engagements today, Isbetta said. He's at the chapter house. Harriet shot Beatrice a telling look. Perhaps some other time, then. I imagine so, Isbetta said. I would like to speak to you, Miss Claiborne. Would you entertain me? Now she would know what Isabella wanted. At last, she held back a relieved sigh. I would be happy to, Miss Slavon. Isabella swiveled her glance to Harriet, sitting on the edge of her chair. Alone. Harriet, go. I think I'm going to stop there.
Makes me want to reread it.
That was lovely. I'm just going to let you two go for it. You have a lot of really interesting questions for each other.
We did our homework. We're ready. I'm going to jump in and start because I liked your reading a lot, and it kind of like touched on a bunch of the questions that I had for you, which is the main one maybe is about your world building. Like, you're clearly a very meticulous and intense world builder in a way that I envy. So this world looks like Regency England, sort of, with a lot of variation. How did you add magic to that world? And how did it sort of like mess with the histories and culture, like actual histories and cultures?
Well, I mean, I guess the biggest thing is that magic in this world has kind of manipulated its way into the halls of power. That being a magician in this world basically means that you're probably influential. Even if you're a working class magician, you are a well-paid tradesperson. It gives you a +10 modifier to the stuff you do. And so I decided that if magic was like the thing that got you power on many different levels and that got you security, safety, and comfort, one of the things that the people who had magic would want to do is control its transmission. And so, like, I was like, what would they want to do? They would want to do this. How did they do this? And that's the mechanism that I used to develop my world. Was basically the idea is that certain people have this special power and they have arranged the world in such a way that they will continue to hold it.
Okay, so that's how you got to basically the centrality of reproductive rights as being like the major like pillar in your world's power system. And in the plot, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. I mean, both of our books kind of connect witching and reproductive rights, but yours is like it's so centralized. The other thing that came up in that reading that I just sort of love about this book is its whole aesthetic. Like the focus on clothing and fashion, and it's got this like gilded, almost like I picture it like did you see the new adaptation of Emma that came out?
I've seen the trailer, but I haven't actually seen Emma yet. But
the trailer's good enough. I just mean that whole vibe, that like just sort of like over the top beauty kind of a thing. I just felt that coming out of your book, and I wondered how you told a witch story with that aesthetic, because my familiarity with the witch aesthetic is very Morticia Addams, very goth, and you went in the other direction, and I wanted to know how and why.
I just it's kind of funny because I would think like if somebody like went to me in the past and said, hey, you're going to write books about women who perform magic, I would have thought, oh yeah, and they're going to wear leather jackets and torn tulle skirts and combat boots and all that. That's what's going to happen. That's what it's going to be like. And the reality is that no, that's not what I wound up writing at all. I ended up writing ladies of fashion. I think probably because my own experience with goth is kind of like goth and punk are cousins. They're counterculturally related. We hung out with the punks all the time. Back in Edmonton in the 80s, the goths and the punks hung out together. The skaters would like swing by every once in a while, on their way to the skate park or gigs. But we were kind of together. And one of the things was was that we were kind of defiant of like what normal society was like. We just kind of like, punk wanted definitely to rebel against it, smash the system, put a new one in its place. Goth was there to make sure that it looked fabulous.
That explains so much why I've never in my life been able to pull off anything close to goth. It's also just fashion, and I can't do it. It's not there for me. That's amazing.
And so when I was thinking about fashion, I also was thinking about power, because fashion ultimately it's two things: your own personal creative expression and also the expression of your wealth. And this is kind of the seesaw that you have in fashion in over the centuries. And so because my magicians have power, open power, they're able to kind of take an aesthetic that is very status quo, very wealth oriented, and very interested in kind of displaying the conformity to the system. So yeah, they're wearing bright colors and pretty embroidery and like totally expensive dresses, as opposed to a group identification that would be, we are rebelling against that.
They have nothing to rebel against, of course. That makes total sense. What's funny is only in this moment of speaking to you did I realize how fundamentally differently we thought about the existence of magic and how it would affect powers. Just the way, like, you put magic into your book and you were like, well, obviously the most powerful people would have this. And I put magic into real history and was like, they would make sure that no one could have access to this, which is two wildly different answers. So thank God for me, because if it had been powerful people with magic, then I would have had to figure out like what they wore. And I think I never say a word more complicated than like skirt or like dress in my book. I didn't know like half the fashion words that you used. Actually, though, on the subject of who has power and how, and in your world, it's inheritable, right? Like it's genetically linked.
Yes.
I thought about that in kind of an early outlines of this book. Mine was genetically linked and I moved away from it. And one of the things that I kind of constantly wrestled with this whole book for me was like how witchcraft works with the gender binary. Like, I think of the Western concept of the witch as a very feminized one. I liked that. I liked that you could give women power and they would become rebellious, but I didn't want to write a magic system that like bought into the gender binary and confirmed it as some sort of biological reality. And I feel like yours was conscious of that too. And I wondered how you thought about that in your world building.
Yeah, right from the beginning, I was like, it doesn't matter. Magic is magic is magic. If you're capable of wielding it, the only thing that matters is the specific spell work that you know and how skilled you are. And that's it. That's
right.
it. Everybody
Yes,
can cast the same spells. It's completely, it's universally compatible. And I didn't even want that to be a question. So I was just sort of like, can everybody do the same magic as everybody else? Yes. And then I pitched it over my shoulder and kept going.
Yeah, no, exactly. For me, I got hung up for a while on the issue of like, well, if everyone has equal access to magic, how would the society become so fundamentally unjust? You know, like, why is the patriarchy still a thing if women have magic? What's going on? And I think both of us came to similar answers for that, which is, number one, people are fundamentally equal, and look what we've managed to fuck up in our own real world.
Yes.
Doesn't seem like it's gone that well for us. And number two, what you were just saying about access to knowledge, right? Like the idea that it's the labor and learning of controlling and channeling magic that is the thing that is unequal access to, you know, like that is another point of control in our societies. And I think one of your questions was about that transmission of that knowledge, which I really liked in your book so much.
Yeah, well, it was something that I noticed that was similar, very similar, that both of our books use secret ways of communicating magic to the right people. And like the ways of passing on spells so that only the intended audience will understand it. Like there's um like a major plot point in your book that is in a work of embroidery. And I was just sort of like, yes, it's perfect. Look at it. Look at it.
As soon as I realized, isn't yours hidden in romance novels? Like there's this romance author who's actually secretly subversive and passing out spells in your book. I was so happy.
I wish I had done that. That made it specifically a romance author. What I ended up doing was I ended up thinking about like kind of like books about weird non-fiction-y subjects.
That's right. It was all the romance. Harriet is a romance reader. That's what I was getting confused. Yeah.
Yeah, Harriet is armed with the social knowledge from her romance books.
Yeah. No, I love that. And what's interesting to me is that like I have all these feelings about kind of being raised on the girl power stories of the 90s, which I don't regret. I love them so much. Girls with Swords and Magic, Alana, all the way. I'm there for that. But also starting to like kind of, as an adult, wish that power wasn't the opposite of femininity. You know, that like you're allowed to have both. And I think it went around Twitter, but like the disappointment of watching the Enola Holmes trailer when she's like, I'm not like the other girls. I didn't learn embroidery. And you're like, man, girl, come on.
That's too bad, because if you had, then maybe you would have seen in this giant cross-stitch tapestry that this particular cross-stitch is actually one color shade lighter than the other ones around it, without reasons of like perspective or light and shadow in the tapestry itself. It is obviously an error, therefore it is a code.
It's a code. There's so many obvious clues there, and it just makes sense that, like, especially since she's supposed to be a spy, and you feel like the language of like subversive people would tend to be able to speak in those. Anyway, it was really disappointing. And so I feel like both of our books were a little bit like pointed in that. They were like, where's witchcraft going to be? Well, it's not on a sword, folks. It's going to be in embroidery, and it's going to be in like ladies' books and stuff. And I loved that so much.
Yeah, I think part of it too was like the means, like the books that I chose were nonfiction, but they were supposed to be like on feminine subjects kind of idea. And so the books would like fly under the radar for just about anybody else. And the thing is that somebody who doesn't know what the purpose of the book is going to read the book, and they're going to get a perfectly cromulent text about companion planting in a lady's garden with typographical errors. But you know, what can you do? And they never know. They would never know unless
It's my favorite kind of secret code. That piece of embroidery, the like major plot point embroidery, was actually real from Salem, for the record. It was one of those moments where I was like, man, I need like a thing, like an artifact from Salem where they would hide this thing. And I was like Googling, and I think it came up on some old museum website, and it was like little girl's sampler that was from Salem during the period of the witch trials. And I was like, yes, it's so creepy. Thank you. That's perfect. Children's embroidery, I think, is kind of inherently creepy. Actually, we've already kind of touched on this, but I wanted to talk to you about just the genre that you write in, sort of, and how all of your work that I've read so far has at least 1 foot, maybe 1.5 feet in the romance genre. And I love them for that so much. And actually, if I were to look back at my own reading history, I've started reading romance for the first time this year, and I feel like your books would be an obvious, like, where it started, like how it started, how it's going. Like,
yes, it's my fault.
It's your fault. I'm so happy you're getting me through the quarantine. Thank you so much. But in particular, I kind of wondered if you had any feelings about writing a witch romance, like Beatrice's desires and ambitions are kind of at odds with her romantic feelings a lot. And the witch is not a figure that is typically a romantic one. And I wondered how you felt about writing that.
I think, I don't know if I was actually like intentionally writing against the whole idea of, witches and romance so much as I was trying to write about the feeling of once you're an adult, what are you going to do? And the social pressures to do it all. And also the fact that, there's still so much strength in this idea that a woman having a career is not really in the terms and conditions. It's something that we do, but I don't feel that it's been completely recognized.
And you
Not
get to
yet.
do it if you also do the other things first. Like, it's a little treat you get to have on top of being a wife and mother, I think.
Yes. And there's also the thing where, if you want to advance in your career and people are holding you back because they don't want to advance you, because all of that work that they've invested in you will be wasted as soon as you have children. Someone get me a toad. I want to start hexing people. Like, please.
Yeah. I at some point saw some chart that showed that the average male presenting income goes up when they have children because they're perceived as like a stable family man in the workplace, and a woman's, of course, takes a huge dive. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind.
And just this that was what I was looking at for Beatrice, was this heavy expectation that Beatrice was naturally going to get married and have children, raise and manage a family, and that was what she should want, what she ought to want, and that wanting anything else is unthinkable. And Beatrice found a way to kind of get around that. She's like, I'm just going to be the spinster, and I'm going to help my dad, try to stop him from investing in too many MLM schemes, and, get the finances back on track, and I will get to be a magician. That's what I will get to do. And then this boy comes along.
It happens to the best of us.
And it's just kind of like this, when Beatrice realizes that this boy has indeed come along, she has a huge, huge, huge problem, because there is an avalanche of expectations over on this side that says that she should do this. And the guy himself is a prize. Like, he's total catch. And but in order to have this life, in order to do this, she has to give up the thing that she wants more than anything. It's like, if somebody went to me when I was 8 years old and said, you can marry a handsome, wealthy, compassionate, considerate, generous man, or you can be an astronaut, I would have been like, astronaut, please, bye.
Peace
I
out,
want to go to the moon.
I was just trying to explain the concept of marriage to my 4-year-old the other day, and it just went poorly. I was like, you're going to meet somebody, and maybe if you love them, maybe you can marry them. You don't have to, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, a stranger? And he was like, yep, probably a stranger. He's like, I can't marry Papa? And he was like, nope, can't marry Papa. I'm sorry. And he was just like, I don't think I want to live with a stranger. That sounds bad. I want to be Spider-Man. I was like, that's fair. You do that. Actually, that makes me think what you're saying about the way you were approaching Beatrice is like, it's kind of an old fantasy trope that in order to have your magic, at least for women, I feel like you have to give up your children. Like, you don't get to you in some way become sterile through the act of magic, or it endangers your baby or whatever. And it makes me rethink how, not to spoil it, but how revolutionary the ending of this book is, and why I liked it so much that they were going on little radical speaking tours together.
I loved the idea of the radical speaking tour. I mean, the postal prank against the patriarchy. I sat back and just smiled to myself when I thought about that. I was like, yes, that is exactly what would happen, and I'm going to write it down.
It's so good. It's so good. And like not totally historically out there. Like one of my favorite stories getting to read in the research for my book was Lucy Stone and her husband, Henry Blackwell. Like Lucy Stone was like a legit radical, and she was making these angry speeches everywhere. And Henry Blackwell saw one of her speeches and was like, I love her. I love her so much. And so he like goes to her and proposes, and she's like, peace, buddy, I'm busy. And in a form of courtship, he pays for a national speaking tour for her and sends her on a train all over the country to make angry speeches. And when she gets back, she's like, I do kind of like you. And he agrees. Instead of their vows, they publish like a screed against the institution of marriage when they get married. And it's pretty cute. It's pretty good stuff.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, because I can just imagine when, like, the theoretical in-between time when, like, Beatrice and Iante are, like, they have to come back and they have to do, like, the customary, we've just got married things. And them just kind of sitting there and being like, you know, if we have to do another ceremony, let's just do it on the beach with no shoes.
Absolutely. Historical countercultures are real. Not everybody was a conformist.
We absolutely eloped on a boat, but
I love it so much. I think that's most of my questions.
Let's see. I have questions. Because we talked about secret spells. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit earlier when you were talking about the embroidery being something that you took from history, is the spectacles of protest that the Sisters of Avalon perform as their resistance efforts. I love them. I love them. They are art. People will agree with me because they are. They're art. They're capital A art because they are so deeply symbolic and at the same time so incredibly personal, and at the same time touching on the mythic, and for the reader touching on the historical, that they just kind of all get together and they create this thing that is even bigger than what it is on the page, like as an act of protest and of like willfully shaping the world into what they want. And just the whole, like, they just resonated with me. Like, yes.
The spectacles were very fun to write, but also it was a real struggle for me to figure out how to write, how to give a protest movement a plot, essentially, because real social progress involves like a lot of meetings and a lot of competing societies with acronyms and a lot of infighting. Like, I've been close enough to real activists to be like, oh my God, we're going to be here all night, aren't we? You know, like it's not something that lends itself to like a novel length thing, you know? And often the things they're fighting for are like one ordinance change in one city in 1 year. It's like small stakes that are often bitterly inconclusive for the most women. You know, they only were ever going to apply to like white wealthy womanhood. And it was depressing to like try to fit real history into the story. But the other thing that I realized at some point was that like protest movements also are spectacles, and so much of successful protest is about creating optics and like making new narratives for people to see, you know, like it's to draw attention. And so I was looking at different kinds of protests that weren't just like the people in the committees, and thinking a lot about Alice Paul and how like one reason she split and formed her own woman's party was that they were like, no, here's what you do. You write letters and you go to meetings. And she was like, what if we chain ourselves to the White House gates? That sounds better, doesn't it? You know, like she had a real sense of that attention drawing and stunts, and but not just stunts, like stunts that drew national attention. And they really did, you know, like stunts are powerful.
Yeah, and meaningful. And this is the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about with the book, because one of the things that I was like that I really, really, really loved was that New Salem has this image of this godly, orderly place. This, like, nothing bad can happen here. You are protected because the city is saintly. But that's just the image that they desperately want to maintain. Under that surface, there are plenty of people who don't match that image. And the thing is that, like our life, these groups, if you ask them in the most abstract terms, what do you want? It's like, we want freedom and equality and all this other stuff, blah, 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 blah. And the answer is essentially the same. And then you say, how are you going to get it? And that's it. Like,
yeah.
yeah. And I just love the fact that there were so many people who, were not here for the crap that New Salem said it was all about. They want change. They want, to improve their world. They want to make it fairer and more just and more free. And none of them agree on how to do it. And so you have all of these groups, all of these other little groups that might have some kind of interlocking communication with each other, but generally are not united.
And that's
I was
the
like,
women's movement, man.
that's the women's movement. That's like, talk to me someday about the various flavors of socialists and communists. Oh my goodness.
I've been on those fringes. I know that game.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you can have this conversation going on and it'll take like maybe about 3 minutes before somebody kind of throws down the debate challenge coin and it's on. And, nobody gets anything done.
Yeah, that was the fun of adding magic. Because I was really bogged down in that. And I was like, man, like so many of these suffragists absolutely hated each other. Like they fought so hard. Like I made up a character in the book whose name is Katie Stone, which is a combination of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucy Stone. And I was like, man, they would hate that. They literally like hated each other. Like they fought so hard, even though if you zoom out just slightly, like they're fighting for the same thing. They're on the same side. And so what I decided is that magic gets to do this thing that we didn't have in real life, which it offers a tangible and specific goal that would be equally accessible to everyone, right? So I pretended that it wouldn't erase issues of class and ethnicity and race and language and all this stuff, but maybe it would be like something of a common goal that could knit people together, at least in one radical group in one city in one summer. And I tried really hard not to, I didn't want to wallpaper over the women's movement and pretend like everybody was linking arms and singing Kumbaya together, because obviously 75% of the white women who were part of that movement were horrible racists, and they didn't really actually want rights for all women. So I didn't want to wallpaper over that, but I also wanted to include all of the women who were fighting for rights beyond just the white woman's vote, garment workers in Chicago and people who were interested in labor rights, people who were writing against lynching laws. I don't know, I really wanted to have the women's movement as it was, but just a little bit better.
I deeply appreciated it. I love the variety of the I'm going to say the desired methodology of all of the different groups of people, basically going after what is essentially the same thing. And just the differences. One of the things that struck me really early in the book was when you meet the suffragists in white and their ladies association, that they are cleaving to respectability politics. And I'm like, oh, honey, no.
It never pans out. It's not a real win. Let it go, girls. I know.
Sufficiently well-behaved ladies hardly ever make history.
But they just thought if they really proved how smart and educated and clean and well-dressed they were, that people would be like, well, obviously you deserve the vote. And, and it's just, that's not how it goes, guys. And the respectability politics that they played were so divisive and so cruel. There's I'm sure you've seen it in some internet post or something before, but like one of the actual ads that they took out, I want to say it was like the 1910s or something. I want to say pre-World War I. But anyway, it was for the women's vote. And it used the picture of an immigrant, like an Irish man who was drunk, and a black man who was standing at the ballot box who had the right to vote. And then there was this like beautiful angelic white woman standing who didn't have the right to vote. And it was like, is this just? And it was like, oh my God, what a nightmare. What an absolute nightmare. I could never imagine a clearer image of like wanting a bigger piece of an unjust pie rather than wanting actual justice. It was appalling to me. And I was like, well, they've got to be in there.
Yeah, and I have one last thing. Because I was reading it, and one of the things that kept happening is I get this song in my head, and it was "We Don't Need Another Hero" by Tina Turner. And the reason why was because I would have hated to write a bog standard query letter for this book, because who was the protagonist?
Whoops.
You're in the headlines, what just happened? Because, like, there are so many stories about the hero, the center of the white hot center of the story, and there are people around them, like the mentor and the love interest and the smart mouse sidekick and blah 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 blah, and they're all there to support the hero in their quest. And that when you get to the end of the book, when you get to the final showdown, the hero is alone, and the people around him are all gone. They're in prison, or they're dead, or they've been kidnapped, or whatever, and the hero alone faces the antagonist. And I'm reading this book, and it's like, yeah, look at this, because nobody is alone in this book, unless it's a bad thing. Unless they are too scared, or unless they are like kind of giving in to the talk about inside baseball about their central character flaw or whatever. But what I loved was everybody was together, and that people did stuff together, and nobody tried to be like the hero of the story. And
Juniper made an effort, I would just like to say, in the drafting process. She kept being like, no, yeah, no, I never want to write scenes with this many people in them ever again.
But I loved it though. I mean, I please never say never, because if you get an idea like this again, I selfishly want it.
No, I don't really mean never. I just mean second books are hard to write, and this one was a pain. And I was sort of, by the end of it, I was like writing scenes. I was like, damn it, wasn't that other woman in this scene? And had to go back to the, you know what I mean? Like when you have so many moving people, and that's not something I'm like natively good at. I realized in a sudden flash that like epic fantasy with like misfit teams and fellowships going through the wilds, that's not me. I can't do that. That would be so hard for me to write. But I mean, yeah, early on I decided that like it's a fundamental problem with writing narratives about social movements is that you can't actually pick out a single hero. And I mean, you can, but I think my favorite, even like movies about them, are the ones that are like showing them as part of this bigger piece.
Yes.
Like that's why the Abraham Lincoln movie is kind of crap and I don't care about it. And that's why the, I suddenly can't remember what it's called, but the MLK movie, that the most recent one that was really good, that was amazing because it showed an entire movement around him.
Yes.
And so that's harder narratively to do. And I think what you were saying about like how the plot works of at least a certain type of Western storytelling, it didn't lend itself to that. Had a lot of pacing problems. I really struggled to make it to wedge all of these people and this idea of a movement into the shape of a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I saw the work in that. When I read it, it's effortless. It's just like yeah, this is so good. Oh my God, look at this. This is so good. What's going to happen? Like, the experience of reading the book was just this, it was beautiful. Like, happening on so many levels. If you are worried, please don't be.
I just got to stay off Goodreads, like everyone. That's the one
Yes.
lesson that I need to take away, is to stay off Goodreads.
Yes.
I don't know if we're coming to the end of our questions. My last thing that I had was that I wanted to hear about your like formative witches, like your favorite witch characters, or girls with magic in general.
Well, let's see. Girls with magic were not thick on the ground when I was a kid. Because the first one that comes to mind is Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And then I'm like, after that.
Well, what's your, just real quickly, like, how did you come to sci-fi and fantasy? Were you rooted more in romance originally? What's your reading history?
When I was a kid, anytime Star Trek the original series or Doctor Who was broadcasting, it was on our television. And that was just kind of the thing that, you know, happened. I had an aunt who was like, you know, you like Star Trek, you like Doctor Who, you always want to watch The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe at Christmas time. Why don't you read this book called The Hobbit? And so fantasy was this kind of this genre that was just barely in reach for me. Like, I had a lot of mystery novels as a kid, and I had a lot of the classic works of literature, particularly for like young people. Like, I read Louisa May Alcott's novels that were specifically meant for children. So people say Little Women, I say The Anthill. And so it was kind of there on the fringes. I knew it existed, but I hadn't been able to really submerge myself into it in any way but Star Trek and Doctor Who.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so see, the question maybe makes more sense for me, because I was basically coming of age in like the late 90s and 2000s, and then like Harry Potter had happened. Young adult fantasy was that thing. Like, like you had as many girls with magic power stories as you could ever want to possibly read. And I was the second generation nerd also. Like, I watched The Next Generation with my mom when I was a kid. Yeah, I guess, were there any questions that we missed? I know we're coming up in the end.
Well, hi again. So I'm back because we do have a question in the comments. If anyone has any more questions, please put them in the comments now so I can read them out. This one is from Emily Alter, who writes, Alix, what are some books you would recommend to learn about Lucy Stone and other suffragists you featured in Once and Future Witches, parentheses, I found at least 3 biographies of Lucy Stone. And I think I can expand this question a little, and I would love to hear you guys talk a bit about your research in general for your respective novels.
I'm so sorry to disappoint everyone, but I cannot remember anything that I read in research for this book. It's been a while. I'm now into a new set of research. I literally could not tell you a single title I read. I mean, I read most of Emmeline Pankhurst's My Own Story, her like memoir that she wrote. I mostly did articles that I stole from my mom's JSTOR account, and primary sources, like things that are like on Project Gutenberg, like things that actual suffragists wrote. I'm so sorry. I don't know which of those Lucy Stone biographies would be good. Chelsea, what do you read for research for this?
Well, okay, for research for The Midnight Bargain, I too have a JSTOR connection. Thank goodness.
Got that hooked up.
It's always cultivate academic relationships because there's so much good stuff in there, and it is so hard to get to that sometimes it just makes me mad.
It should. And even JSTOR, for the record, has a 5-year moving wall, which is nonsense. And I think that they should deal with that. But anyway, carry on.
So there was, I did some stuff where I was reading about, there was the one that I'm thinking of right now is titled Crossing Oxford Street, and it's about geopolitics in London. And it was something that I was thinking of when I was kind of mentally designing Pendleton and Meryton in my head about the geopolitics of this region and like what it meant when people found out where you lived, and that one kind of sticks in my mind. There was an article that I read online that was specifically, it was very long. It was specifically supposed to be like a very brief history of the British East India Company and that crap they pulled. And I read it and I got really mad. I decided I didn't want any of that. None of that in my book. I didn't want to do that. So I basically like took it and was like, okay, well, if I absolutely don't want to do this, what do I do instead? And a lot of the research that I did kind of turned out to be that sort of thing. It was like I looked it up and I decided I wanted to rebel against it. And I did a lot of diving for the fashion. I did a lot of diving in the Victoria and Albert Museum. There's a museum of like cotton and textiles in Manchester. I can't remember the name of the website. The Metropolitan Museum of Art has a pretty nice display of 18th century fashion. I looked into like corsetry and underthings and stuff like that. I just kind of like pick up shiny rocks at random and then carry them around in my pockets, and that's research for me.
I love that analogy, shiny rocks. There's another question in the comments from Julia O'Connell. This is for C.L. Polk. Can you talk about your inspiration for the magic system in the Midnight Bargain, specifically the spirits that the magicians summon and the interesting relationship between them?
Okay, so I made a decision early on that I wanted spirits to be central to the magical system in the book. And it isn't that I like researched them from a particular source. I just asked myself questions and then answered them with my decisions. So I made them up. I basically decided that spirits were their own intelligent entity. They weren't the ghosts of dead humans or anything like that. They were their own thing. And that they didn't have a body, and that what they really, really, really wanted was a body. And this was why they were willing to do deals with magicians, was for the chance to experience being in a physical body. I actually got the idea from an old Anne Rice novel.
Which one? I'm so curious.
Oh gosh, The Witching Hour. The Witching
That
Hour.
makes sense.
Mayfair Wishes and Lasher, and I loved this book beyond reason until I got to the last 50 pages, and then I was like, no, it's a train wreck. Why? Because it didn't go the way I wanted it to go.
I did also see, I think it was Anne Rice who posted a thing about how she never lets her editor edit her at all, and I was like, interesting. Good to know.
I never want that to happen to me. I never want that to happen to me. If you knew what this book looked like before Sarah got her hands on it.
It was pretty good.
A quiet word for Nivea Evans at Orbit, who wrote me an edit letter that said, "We think you have a great start."
Oh no.
It was rough times.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's kind of that Twitter meme that's going around, what feels like blank but isn't really blank.
It feels like an attack, but it's an attack.
Oh goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
So
Editors are good. That's what we're saying.
editors are essential.
okay, I will hold that close when next time I send you an edit letter and you're just like, we can't talk anymore.
P.S. Editors are good. Remember, editors are good.
Editors are good. I just have to like kind of retreat into this ball of self-recrimination for a couple of days. It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, it's part of the process, lying on the floor and crying. And my husband being like, but you can just fix it like you did last time. And I'm like, you
And then you
don't
just
understand.
throw an arm over your eyes.
Basically, Howl in Howl's Moving Castle when he's melted to the table. That's my whole, yeah.
Oh gosh.
That's the artistic process, right? At work.
I do have to go fairly soon because it is my kids' bedtime and they're like rattling the doorknob like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park. So I have a limited amount of time here.
Do we have time for one quick last question? Okay. This is from Leanne, who writes, your books use magic to reach a form of gender equality. Do you think we need something magical for women to be empowered in reality?
I mean, I'll just say no. I mean, I think what's funny is both of us, as we've talked about, made societies where magic isn't determined by your gender and barely by your genes. Like, it basically puts everyone on a genetically or whatever even playing field, and then it's a process of rectifying the injustices that humans have made. And I think that that's the same thing that we have in our real world. Like, humans are basically on an even playing field, and then we fuck it up, and it's a process of slowly fixing it, which I think we're hopefully bending that moral arc of the universe. I don't know. I like to think we are. The last 4 years have really shaken that faith.
I gotta say, though, having a few hexes on hand would be really handy.
It would help. I wouldn't say it wouldn't help. It would help, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I will say that it was, I think, like, after a full moon on is it a blue moon and a full moon or something crazy like happened all at once, and I felt like a lot of witches went out, and then the next morning we got news that like the entire White House had COVID, and I was like,
Yeah. I'm not saying it was witchcraft, but
I'm just, causality is up for debate on that one.
It's witches plus K-pop stands, you know?
Yeah.
yes.
I'm there for it. I'm there for it.
All right. So I think at this point we should let Alix go before her children break down the door.
With the screaming phase, I can hear it. The 2-year-old's.
I had to hold my breath that whole time.
Oh my God.
Yes, we will let you go. Be a wonderful parent and take care of your kids. Why don't you go be a parent? You know what? Do what you got to do with 2020. You know, you're doing great. It's all good. Thank you so much, Alix. Thank you, Chelsea, for being here. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting. This was so lovely. It was really fantastic to hear your readings, hear your conversations. I desperately need to know more about this next project, Alix. So if you could just send that my way, thank you. That'd be great. That'd be nice. Thank you so much. But seriously, thank you both for being here. It was wonderful. To everyone who joined us, thank you for your lovely questions. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here with us tonight. We always enjoy seeing you. If you are going to the Discord community hour, we'll be popping into that in just a minute. If you're not, have a lovely evening wherever you are. Stay safe, stay healthy. Support independent bookstores and buy early for all your holiday needs. I guess I'll sign everyone off. I'll go last, but Alix, Chelsea, any last words, Sarah?
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Yeah,
Lovely.
I had such a good time, and I loved the conversation.
Thank you both so much. This was so much fun.
This is great. Thanks so much, guys. I'm going to log you off. So there we go. And now it's just me. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for taking care of us and buying and supporting our wonderful books and our authors. We really, really appreciate it. If you don't follow us yet, you can find us at Erewhon Books across all of our socials. We have 3 books out now: The Fortress by S.A. Jones, The Scapegracious by Hannah Abigail Clark, and of course, The Midnight Bargain from C.L. Polk, who you just had the pleasure of hearing. We're going to be around. We got some great stuff coming up next year. We've got some reveals and covers and announcements for the summer and the fall for 2021 to come, as well as some wonderful books in the winter. And we hope to see you at future events. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you next time. Cheers.